Get in there.
Okay, we're live from the digital Thunderdome. We have with us Sun Fei Yang from Chicago. Say hi.
Hey guys.
And number 80 from the, is it? I looked up your zip code earlier. I'll just say from Los Angeles, so we don't give too much away, right?
I guess. I mean, you can say 90003 is whatever.
90003. And there's been a lot going on this weekend, a lot of things people in America don't even pay attention to. But of course, there was the March for Our Lives. There was, what was the other thing that happened? Sacramento shooting with Stephon Clark killed by 2 police officers, and I think it was 20 gunshots. Is that correct?
Yeah.
There was also, by the way, we're going to go to this topic first. In Yemen, there have been ballistic missiles fired towards the Saudi capital by Iranian-backed rebels. So, Fayyan, you said you've been following this pretty closely. Do you think that this is kind of getting into the realm of something that's out of control, like a war that's becoming, like an invisible Vietnam or something?
Yeah, it is in a way. So this was, the new crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. This was kind of his brainchild even before he was elevated to his current post. He was really seen as the brains behind the Saudi invasion of Yemen. And it's really, they're trying to combat Iranian influence in that country is, their rationale. It is a mostly Shia state. The rebels are mostly Shia, and that's seen as being linked with Iran. So they've been there for I don't know how many months, at least like almost 2 years now. It's been pretty bloody for the people of Yemen, and now the rebels there, they've got some ballistic missiles. They've been firing them at Riyadh. This is, they fired 7 of them I think yesterday, but it's not even the first attack they've had with missiles on the Saudi capital. So there's not really an end in sight for the Saudis right here. They get backing from the U.S. and the U.K., but we're not sending any ground troops or anything. So, it doesn't seem like they'll be able to end this war anytime soon, especially if Iran is tacitly backing the rebels there.
Do you think that America really is involved in something there that we have no business even having anything to do with? Because I think we gave them like some crazy amount of aid, like $300 billion of over time, but still of military aid. And Saudi Arabia is not known for its good faith use of weapons in conflict. They've been known to pass it along to certain jihadist groups. So, what would you say is the is the reliability there? Do you think that there has been a real change in current over there, or are we really just repeating the mistake we did in Afghanistan?
I mean, I think we're aware of what we're doing. It's not like we have any. We really believe the Saudis are changing for the better or anything, but from the U.S. perspective, Iran is worse. Iran is a worse enemy, and so if the Saudis are willing to fight Iran, then we are going to support the Saudis. That's all it comes down to. I think it's a very realist perspective from the U.S. right here. We're not trying to support some great democracy over there in Saudi Arabia, but we are looking for allies against Iran. And Saudi Arabia is really the only country there that has that capability.
Yeah, I kind of look at them as 2 different countries that are bad in different ways. Well, sometimes in similar ways, but you get what I'm saying. I'd say Saudi Arabia is kind of a funder of terrorism. Iran also funds terrorism, but also perpetrates terrorism abroad. But in my opinion, being somebody who came from more of the Ron Paul school of interventionist foreign policy, I'd say it would be more conducive to negotiate impasse between those 2 countries and get America uninvolved. Do you think that it's maybe a religious issue that America can't bridge that gap and say, well, we'll either negotiate the 2 of you some sort of settlement over the Gulf, or we're going to leave? Do you think that's the issue, or is America really in it to control the region and just stay there for the long term?
So I think the U.S. realized that, we really screwed up with the Iraq War in that we removed the biggest regional counterbalance to Iran. You remember that Iran and Iraq fought a really bloody war in the 80s in which we were backing Saddam. But, you know, now we drawn a big favor with Iraq and we removed like their biggest enemy and rival. So now that Iran has no constraints there, it's set on becoming kind of the regional hegemon as well. And so, Saudi Arabia really can't accept that. So that's not a conflict that we can easily solve or remediate, especially since there also is the religious aspect. But that's also why I see Saudi Arabia as a much more dangerous country than Iran, because you point out the differences. Another difference is that the global footprint of Shia Islam is very small. It's very constrained to the Middle East. Like the largest Muslim countries in the world, like Indonesia, they're all Sunni Muslims. That's where Saudi Arabia has set up, a lot of madrasas. They have imams preaching there as well. The imams you hear in like Australia, the UK, most of them are Saudi linked. Like there simply aren't enough Shia Muslims around for Iran to fund. So they do fund terrorism, but it's all very regional. It's like limited to Lebanon and Syria, whereas Saudi Arabia's reach is a lot more global, and I think a lot more dangerous for that reason.
Yeah, I have to say that in the current situation, you're definitely right. Saudi Arabia has already wreaked havoc through its funding of jihadist and non-jihadist Islamist groups throughout Europe and the Western world. Iran is also doing that in sort of a different way in South America, converting a lot of people to Shia Islam who otherwise may not be Shia Muslims. But I'd say it's really a kind of it's a bad trade-off, and I respect a lot of people who are both progressive and like myself, a little more on the libertarian side, who oppose even getting involved. Even having been a former Israeli soldier, I think that the U.S. being involved in Iraq was kind of the tipping point where we really, really fucked up there. It was something that this is a really odd way to make up for it, and I don't think it's gonna go well long term. Number 80. So, of course, Yemen. We're not putting troops there, but we are doing drone warfare. There is also talk of using some of this technology in the civilian civilian law enforcement, some of that stuff. Do you think that so everybody's seen RoboCop, right? Alex is joining us. Welcome, Alex.
What's up, fam?
Everybody's seen RoboCop. Everybody, or hopefully you've seen RoboCop. If you haven't,
never seen that.
Maybe you've seen the movie Chappie. Maybe
Nope.
you've seen, but artificial intelligence is coming to real life. And do any of you, I asked number 80 because you haven't been in the discussion yet, but do you fear kind of roboticized law enforcement force at the moment? Because it sounds like this could happen.
You know what? I never really gave that a thought. I mean, I think people.
You didn't see the movie.
No, I saw Chappie. I saw RoboCop. I saw Short Circuit. Short Circuit's my favorite damn movie. But what I'm saying is that I think more people right now are more worried about robotics and things like that taking jobs than they would be about robotics and policing or being used in warfare in a more extensive amount.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat. Maybe Sun Fei-Yan can answer. From Bandsaw Bandit from Australia. I hope all is well. We know that you've had some issues with health in Australia. So what about the U.S. funding of terrorism as well as terrorist acts? Does anybody want to take that one?
Can you ask him for an example? Definitely unsavory groups the U.S. funds.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
no question about that.
You could mention Colombia or something, but that would be Please be more specific, Bandsaw.
I mean, we funded the Taliban when they were fighting the Soviet Union too. So there's a long list of unsavory groups the U.S. has funded.
What about you, Alex? Do you think that being involved in Yemen right now is a good idea? We're kind of tempting citizens around.
Very minimally. I mean, and when I say that, I mean just don't completely pull out of the. This is just the Middle East in general. Don't completely pull out 1000%, but be peacekeepers. Don't do like new operations or try to start wars and put our troops' lives at risk, I guess.
So would you agree though that, because I thought when they funded Saudi Arabia, they gave them all that money.
Yeah,
I
that was
thought
stupid.
I thought that was a bad idea too.
I don't understand why Saudi Arabia is considered an ally. They literally fund terrorism. So,
well, they're an ally for certain things, but they're pursuing their own interests, and that's why I don't believe in the financial or military aid model of alliances. It's kind of it's backfired too many times, in my opinion. That might be what Bandsaw is talking about. That we've given money to Saudi Arabia, and they've passed some of it on to ISIS.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia, I don't trust them. I think they're a terrible ally to try to invest in. Like, if you try to invest in the UK, that's you can trust the UK for the most part, but like not Saudi Arabia.
So the UK funds Saudi Arabia just as much as we do, funnily enough.
They do it because they have oil interests with them. That's why it's an economic thing.
So Bandsaw said mindless bombing of civilians would be considered a terrorist act in anyone's language. Example, just open your, well, no, we need a specific example. If you want to talk about bombing tons of people in Iraq, okay, so what do you guys think it was an ethical decision to even enter Iraq? I think that's what he's referring to, that we were bombing civilian targets in Iraq. I personally think that it was either just an adventurous decision that was completely wrong and based on intelligence that was not verified properly. What do you guys think?
I agree with you.
Are we talking about the intelligence of weapons of mass destruction?
Yeah, the yellow cake.
Yeah, nah. It was. I felt like it was pointless.
They were there. So.
Okay, so Bansaw's mentioning Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Well, yeah, but we basically agree with him. I don't think we
disagree.
Yeah. So
Bush was a good president outside of the war in Iraq. That's what made him so bad, in my opinion.
Whoa.
No, I don't. Anyway,
that's a reach.
We're gonna start with this.
That is a reach.
Yeah, I don't think he was that good of a president, even with.
He was above average, I think.
Look, man, if Kanye didn't like him, nobody likes him.
He's trolling. Alex is trolling. There's no way he's serious about that.
Let me put it this way: I like Bush's persona. He was a nice guy. Maybe
what?
No, but Bill Clinton was a nice guy too.
Bill Clinton was not a nice guy. He was a womanizer.
No, but he was a nice guy though. If you were friends with him, he was a very nice guy. A lot of people would have wanted to hang out with Bill Clinton.
That's a whole another can of worms.
Okay, check this out, Alex. How about this? If the scandal never came out, would you have disliked Bill Clinton still?
Which scandal?
I'm talking any scandal. Monica Lewinsky. Let's just go with that. Let's run with that.
I would like him a lot more if the scandals never came out. Yes.
Exactly. Then that means that his persona was likable. It's just that event kind of, I guess, altered your perspective of him.
Yeah, but
I would say as far as
how I judge people is by their character.
Yeah, but George Bush's character was not, spotless. I mean, he was a cocaine abuser for many years.
I like the thought of compassionate conservatism, which is what Bush tried to exemplify. I thought that was cool.
All right. So, Fayang, your thoughts on President Bush?
I mean, did you? If we just ignore Iraq, did you like No Child Left Behind? Did you think that federalizing education was a good idea?
Inflating the housing bubble?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really think of any big compassionate conservatism wins, from the Bush administration. Like, certainly it sounds good, I guess, in theory, but there was education, there was Iraq, and there was the tax cuts, I guess. What else did he do?
The tax cuts were good.
All right, but is that
I don't know
compassionate
much about No
conservatism?
Child Left Behind. In all seriousness, I can't really speak on that too much. What
It
I
was
do,
fucking terrible. That's all you needed to know.
what I know about Bush that I liked was like how he tried to fight AIDS. Just little things like that. He's like, to whom much is given, much is expected. I remember he said that in a speech during like an AIDS initiative. And
He said he tried to fight AIDS.
Yes.
Yeah, he did try to fight AIDS. He's right. He donated a lot of, or he donated a lot of aid from. It wasn't him, but the U.S. directed a lot of aid to Africa to fight AIDS under President Bush.
Okay, I thought it was in the U.S. I was like, what? Well, okay, that makes sense.
I think in the U.S. he also made a number of efforts. I don't think it was as big of in Africa. He's really credited with helping to contain this fight of AIDS. But I think people in some ways they do hate President Bush for some of the wrong reasons. Now there's this whole movement to rehabilitate him relative to Trump, and I think it's I like to say the reason I'm not a Democrat is because of Al Gore, and the reason I didn't end up voting even after I stopped believing in the Democrats was because of George Bush, because they both presented such awful alternatives.
Yeah, I think with this whole comparison to Trump thing, as a person, Bush was a million times better. Like again, I told you, I think Bush was a good man at heart, but as a president, Trump is a million times better.
Whoa.
So let's get to. By the way, Fayang does have to leave, so he did want to talk a little about gun control, and there was the march this weekend, and I was watching Tim Pool, his man on the street observations, and a lot of people who were marching did not seem very literate in the real changes needed to be made to the gun laws. That would be, and in fact, the march had no cohesive message. So, Fayang, you've said that you do have some belief that gun control should be pursued. Would you like to maybe give a piece of your vision as far as that goes?
Yeah, I mean, my mind is pretty open to be changed on like a lot of the details, but in general, the principle that not everyone should be allowed to have a gun. Like I think everyone is agreed that 18 is a reasonable. Like we have 18 as an age to buy a gun, right? We wouldn't want to lower that to say 12. So we do have a consensus that there can be some limitations on guns. We do a background check, like if you have a criminal record. I don't think people there. So drawing where those lines are, and a lot of the proposals from the March people, I think, were a little, little out there. Like even ones that for mental health, I don't think make a lot of sense, just because mental health diagnoses can be very iffy as well, and I don't feel good about denying rights based on that as well. So it really is about finding what grounds are reasonable and people can agree on. But there definitely is room for some gun control there. It shouldn't be a free for all.
Yeah, but the issue that I've seen, and I've talked to people who are gun educated, who are former NRA. For example, my friend who's a former NRA instructor, who does say, yes, we do need some more gun control. But when you're talking about the gun control movement as a whole, what they seem to be focusing on is banning classes of weapons, and they can't agree on on how to define those classes. And in many cases, the people arguing for it don't really understand the mechanisms involved, or what the terms automatic versus semi-automatic are. So do you think, as somebody who is open to gun control, that there's an issue of coherence in the message for gun control? That in many cases these are people who are basically outlining kind of a Candyland approach to it, like this fantasy land that is very ill-defined, and that's why they're not getting through to anybody on the other side? Or is there another reason?
They need to do a better job with spokespeople, and also some basic education on the facts. Like you aren't going to convince a lot of people if you're using the wrong terms and you don't seem to have a basic gun knowledge. So I do think those things should be improved. And that's really the gun control movement's fault for choosing like 17-year-old kids as their spokesmen. You know, I understand why the kids they're also kids too. So, you know, that also has the bit your movement as well. So definitely need to be more like careful with their choice of spokesman and who's representing their movement.
Yeah, I think what I've seen was one of the funniest turning points was when, and you know, will you guys let me share a meme real quick? Anybody have any objections?
No, go for it.
So,
I got a question though after you're done with that.
yeah, so one of the individuals involved in he complained that now they have to bring clear backpacks to school and that violates
that was fun.
First Amendment rights. So, you know, people are just having a field, and plus the raised fist salute at the end of his speech. So people are just teeing off on him, and he's kind of that's kind of, I think, to your point, Fayang, that he's become the object of ridicule, sort of due to his own emphatic and very emotionally driven rhetoric on video. You know, on Twitter, everywhere he's been, he's very emotional and you know, uses a lot of profanity. Not that we have a problem with that here, but to a national audience, you know, it kind of gives the impression that he's unprofessional and that he's a hothead. So, yeah, what were you gonna? Who said? Was it you, 80? You said you had a question.
Did we ever? I don't know. This is a literal question. After Columbine, they were discussing that there was loopholes in certain bills concerning gun laws. Were those ever patched, or did they just leave it as it is?
Well, the irony about Columbine was that the weapon used in Columbine was created by a loophole.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Because of the assault weapons ban, banned quote unquote assault weapons, but they manufactured this weapon called the High Point 9mm in response to it that was completely compliant with the new law, and it was and by the way, Columbine. So yes, the High Point 9mm was very useful in their rampage through the school, but they also used over 100 improvised explosive devices, bombs. So, you know, there's no loophole that you can close to prevent people from manufacturing bombs at home. And you know, the High Point 90 was a horribly manufactured weapon. I'm not a gun expert, but I've looked at reviews for it, and it's not very popular. But because of Columbine, it became kind of a cult favorite among wackos, if you want to put it that way, and other people have tried to use it in school shootings as well.
Yeah, because they were talking about ghost guns and that you could buy like the piece in the middle, and all you needed to do was like drill holes in it. I guess because they weren't fully manufactured, like completely manufactured, so you had to do the last bit of work yourself.
Look, when you get to ghost guns, that comes to the point where the law is not going to help you, because a ghost gun literally means something that's not going to be on any registry ever and anywhere. It's illegally manufactured by definition. That's what a ghost gun is. So you're not, Smith & Wesson doesn't have a serial number on it. It literally is a gun that is untraceable anywhere. So that's something that there's no loophole to be closed there. A lot of them are manufactured like up in the mountains in the Philippines. There's a great Nat Geo documentary on that if you guys want to check it out.
Smith & Wesson does this?
Not Smith & Wesson. I'm just taking, you know, if it was a Smith & Wesson firearm, there would be a serial number on it, right?
Right.
But a ghost gun is manufactured by some dude up in the mountains hiding from Duterte. So they're not gonna. The whole point of it is it's a gun perfect for a crime, because it's not for self-defense. It's specifically manufactured by people to sell to the criminal element. So there's no loophole to close that. It's like the war on drugs. It's the same idea. They're not terribly hard to manufacture. So I think that's an issue that no law can really solve. So what about you guys? You know, 80. did you see anything about the march that really stuck out to you, Alex?
You know what's funny? I mean,
I'll go next.
I saw that the video of that girl. What's the name of the girl? The Gonzalez lady.
Emma Gonzalez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Gonzalez lady with the flag. And I mean, the way that they were praising her in the comment section, I really thought it was going to be just this amazing ass speech, and it was kind of It wasn't as good as I thought. Like, I don't know. I felt like people were hyping it up. Maybe because she's 17 or something. I don't know. Maybe because she's still in high school. Like, everybody was like, "Oh, she did really good." But I mean, I didn't really like. I don't know. Like, it wasn't as good as I thought. And I thought the way that you guys were ridiculing her, I'm thinking like, man, like she must have really made a big point or something for everybody to be so upset and trying to nitpick little things to like kind of like tear down her image or whatever.
Well,
My biggest
Alex,
problem
go ahead. Go ahead before I. Yeah, you can go ahead. I'll respond after that.
My biggest problem with Emma Gonzalez was she's sitting up there with a Cuban flag on her little jacket up here, and like, she's sitting there lecturing the country on gun control when it was Fidel Castro that disarmed everyone in Cuba and then went and killed anyone who opposed him. It's just the irony. You can't make this stuff up. That was my problem with Emma Gonzalez. And it makes me sad for my generation because we're the first ones begging for the government to take all our rights away. Normally, people fight for their rights, not for them to be taken away. And then they silence conservative people on guns. Like, I forgot that other student's name, but he was basically saying, like, hey, I don't support gun control. And then, like, he wasn't allowed to speak at the march. Where were his voices? It's like there's more to life than the left-wing media's echo chamber. That was my whole take on the whole thing.
Yeah, I don't know if Fayang agrees with me, but I expected that reaction that Alex had, and I kind of had the same reaction as far as her showing up and you know the whole thing with shaving her head. I think that happened after the shooting, and I've seen her in interviews rubbing her eyes constantly, and you know just having this very I'd say exaggerated emotional display all the time. It looks very much like acting. When she has the Cuban flag on her jacket and she's basically raising the fist. So, you know, me and Adi have had, you know,
she raised the fist. I didn't see that.
They've all been raising the fist.
The boy raised the fist, not the girl, right?
They've all been raising the fist. So
not well, whatever.
There's a different photo of her raising the fist. So
with the jacket on?
Yeah. And and whether or not it's intentional or not, the imagery, and you talk a lot about symbolism, the imagery that comes out of it is that this is somebody who is basically the same as a lot of these Antifa people, you know, very, you know, radical in her beliefs, but with very little coherent beliefs. And that's a huge flaw of the march. If you saw the Twitter interview that they had, they got trolled hugely, because the reason that they get trolled is because the guy, whose name is not to be mentioned because sometimes you get blocked for it, the guy was saying that he bases a lot of his political beliefs off of House of Cards. Now, fine, House of Cards is a decent show, but it doesn't sound like a serious way to learn about public policy, you know, with all due respect. I mean, all of us are, you know, we screw around and you know, we watch stupid movies or whatever, but I hope you guys don't base your movies off of My Little Pony or off of or off of even shows like The West Wing or The Daily Show or whatever. It kind of shows that you're into representation by the media of politics as opposed to the way it really is, because, you know, a fictional account of something isn't the way it truly is in real life. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I look at Emma Gonzalez. Of course, I do find a lot of the trolling of her hilarious, but, you know, I guess anybody else want to shout off on that?
Hey, Ramon, one thing before I dig in, and it's related to this, and also to my job too, which is very important. But you know, like, I think we're
having a hard time.
Passengers, but
we're having a hard time hearing you.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is related to my job and also guns, and something I think that is a lot more effective than are doing. But did you see the news that Citigroup restriction on all gun sales
Can you guys hear
and
me?
high-key
Oh, it's
magazines?
breaking up.
Yeah, I'm struggling. I think it's your internet.
Can you try reconnecting? I know you
Yeah,
have to
sure.
go.
Let me try that.
Yeah.
Well, until he comes back, I don't know. I think, like I said, I just think it was she has Cuban ancestry or whatever, and she just has a flag on her shoulder. I mean, it's no different from people.
That doesn't matter though, because perception equals reality, and the perception. First of all, people don't know that, and she doesn't make that well stated.
Right.
And
Does she fucking have to though? Like, I mean, come on, dude. I can walk around with a fucking.
that's the irony of it though. That
Nigeria or something.
She's calling for gun control with the Cuban flag on her shoulder. Her parents fled from Cuba, and where they obviously had an issue either with economics or the freedom there. That's one of the reasons people are laughing at it. It doesn't matter whether it's because she's honoring her Cuban heritage. That it's irrelevant at that point because it becomes ironic.
Mm-hmm. It's more than that too. Like,
let's see if Yang can
you guys hear me now? I turned off video.
That might help. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, did you guys see that Citigroup put a ban on bump stocks and high capacity magazines to their credit cards, as well as requiring that all their retail partners institute background checks? And I think they banned the sale of guns to 18 to 21-year-olds. That is actually pretty big news, like from my industry, because I work at Capital One, because Citi does the retail cards for Walmart and Costco, so they control a pretty big portion of this like retail, partnership volume.
I think they're opening themselves to a lot of lawsuits by doing that.
There definitely will be lawsuits, but I don't think a big bank like Citi does something like this unless they're somewhat confident that they'll either win the lawsuit or that they're gonna net gain more customers and lose them over this. But that's actually a pretty big step for a major corporation to take a stand like that on this gun issue, right? There are a lot of NRA members out there. Gun sales, is a very lucrative business, so that actually was something that took me off guard because I work with gun sales quite a bit at my job. I work on the Cabela's partnership for Capital One, so if you guys are familiar with Cabela's, they move a lot of guns. So, a lot of gun sales are happening through the credit cards I work on.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great idea, but definitely they probably had a session on it and they had a cost benefit analysis on it. So we'll see how that shakes out. Alex, you had something to share.
There was more to the Emma Gonzalez thing. Like, it's more like what you said, this whole perception thing. If that is the case, then she's a total fool. She's making a fool of herself. Like, you got to know your audience, and you got to know people will respond that way if you're, you know what I'm saying? So that's either, one, really foolish, but two, when you're in America, at this point, you're an American. You're not a Cuban. I don't go call myself a Greek. I was born and raised here. Yeah, my ancestors are Greek. But this is my country, and I love it. If I were Greek, I wouldn't be here right now. That's just my 2 cents on the whole thing.
Bro, but the thing about it is there's a lot of people that come here from or have ancestry from other countries. Like, there's people from Mexico that have the Mexico flag, or there's people from, I don't know, Honduras, and they have the Honduran flag. You have different people that come from different parts of the world. Japan, people walk around with like Japan jackets or whatever in LA, certain parts of LA. So it's like, okay, just being happy or being like, I guess, aware or showing where you come from or pride of, I guess, where you come from or your roots, it's not really a big deal. Now, like, if she would have started saying something that was, I guess, somewhat communistic, then I'll be like, oh, okay, like that kind of like, oh,
yeah, but she did say something like that. So.
Yeah, asking for the government to take away all our guns, isn't that communistic?
I mean, you got to give me more than that, bro. I mean, at the end of the day,
Fayang had to leave, so everybody say bye to Fayang. I hope he can still hear us, but
Hey, have a good night, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for. I'm just gonna tell him in the chat, but keep going. Sorry.
What was I saying? I don't remember what I was saying. What was I saying?
Yeah, you were saying
about
that
our heritage and like Mexican and Japanese jackets.
Yeah, there's just a lot of people that wear their flag as a symbol of their heritage. It's not really, it's nothing that's really like, oh, okay, like I'm representing what my country looks like now.
No, that doesn't hold here, and I'll explain why. There's a difference between that doesn't. Let's say if I was to like put on a jacket for, let's say I'm Irish American, so for that, some people kind of don't care because most of the Irish Americans have over the years. I mean, they go back for over 150 years, so you're not really thought of as Irish American. So it's a perception issue. So it's kind of like you're one of those you know, Ben Affleck Boston Irish, you know, I'm from Southie or whatever. So stuff like that people would probably ignore. If you're somebody who goes around and touts the Mexico heritage, and you're talking all the time about American policy and telling Americans how to do their policy, then it becomes an issue of people are like, well, a lot of what you're saying actually goes against the grain of what our Constitution and our system of government means. So you're actually flaunting the symbolism of a country, Cuba, that is an adversary of the U.S., that has confiscated weapons, for example. It's the same issue that happens when you see a lot of Muslim groups that they fly the, you know, they'll have the flag with the Shahada, you know, the testament of the faith, and they'll go to demonstrations, but you won't see the American flag, and they'll say, well, we're just as American as everybody else. Well, not by perception, not by perception. So it's tremendously bad imaging on her part, and it's actually, it just shows that she's not interested in winning the hearts and minds of people who need to be converted to her cause. She's actually only speaking she's preaching to the choir. That's what I see out of that.
And the media loves it because they can use it to push their agenda.
Have you guys been to Florida?
Yeah, I've been to Florida.
I was there last week.
You do know that there's a shitload of Cubans there, right?
That doesn't matter. The
whole
thing
matter because at the end of the day, dude, look, the Latin community, as I was talking to one of your friends in the chat, who
don't mention your name, by the way.
I'm not. So that's why I said one of your friends. Well, anyway, when we were talking about it, she agreed that the Latin community is very prideful. All right. And that's the thing about it. The Latin community is prideful in their roots. Like, you can't name almost any Latin community that doesn't flaunt their flag or they kind of big up where they come from. They do it in such a fashion that there actually is this competition between these different Latin groups for which group is better. And
it's actually ironic that you mentioned that because Cubans are the most like pro-American Latin American group in the country. They're not like Mexicans and stuff who like hate America and when they reform it. They like love America because they were fleeing from a horrible place.
Well, I don't know about the Mexicans hating America thing, but I mean,
they don't.
The reason that
they're like, oh yeah, we're loyal to Mexico. We want to change America, and we're yada yada yada. And
yeah, but it's not that they want to change anything. They just like I said, that's exactly what we're talking about. They just have pride in where they came from.
That's not like I said. The issue here, that she could be as proud as she wants to, and nobody's telling her not to. The issue is that it's ironic that you lead a march in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, to enact gun control over American citizens wearing the Cuban flag, a country that restricts freedom. They imprison people for crimes that, you know, such as smuggling money in or you know, smuggling contraband medicine, things like, or actually that's Venezuela more, but you know, she could be as proud as she wants. It doesn't matter. People view it in a certain way, and it really, she has no reply for it. She can say, "Oh, I'm a proud Cuban American." Well, the key is that she's a Cuban American because of the lack of freedoms in Cuba. Among those freedoms is the lack of a right to bear arms.
Right.
But you know, by the way, the Fourth Amendment over there, they don't have a Fourth Amendment. The police can come to your house and search it without a warrant. They don't have the 10th Amendment. You know, Oriente Province and you know, over they don't have states that can object to federal power in Cuba. So you know, it's not just an issue of the Bill of Rights. It's a basic understanding of you know, why people believe in the Fourth Amendment. And you know, when she goes and she has a demonstration like that, yeah, she can be proud of being Cuban. It doesn't mean people have to, you know, people perceive it in a different way. If I was to go to, you know, if I was to go to London right now, did you see the Laura Southern video where she took a flag with the, you know, the Muslim prayer on it, the Shahada, and she put it on a gay pride flag? Well, people objected to it. She said, well, I think that, you know, this is all blown out of proportion, homophobia in Islam. They had to have a police escort take her out because the people were threatening her. It's a perception issue. And, you know, this isn't an issue of right or wrong. It's an issue of she's completely clueless. She doesn't know how to reach an audience of people who will actually give her or will actually give her credibility. In fact, I think that the march set their credibility pretty far back. I mean, what do you guys say?
You're talking about the Emma chick still, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, at the end of the day, you have to look at it like this. How many speeches has she done?
She does speeches literally several times a week.
24/7.
No, I mean pre-shooting.
She was involved in all sorts of crap at school, you know. All
seriously, she was. I looked her up because I was curious, and she was always a gun control activist. There was an article in the Washington Post about how 2 hours before the shooting, she was talking about how much she hated guns in the NRA during her AP government class. And it's like, it's kind of sick because she's like, she's using the deaths of her classmates to push a political agenda. If I ever died, like, I would be pissed if somebody used my death to promote like gun control, because I've been so against gun control my whole life. I think it's one of the most stupid things.
We have a question from Carlos in the chat. He says, I can't join and not even watch, but just dropped by to ask if it really happened, how long did it take me to call Hogg a communist? We've called Emma a communist, so I mean, technically 2 minutes, but it wasn't Hogg. So I hope that answers. I would call her a communist.
but see, check this out. Oh, would you really mean it though?
Yes.
Okay. Now that kind of segues into something else I wanted to talk about. Do you believe that the word Marxist and communist is being thrown around so freely to the point where when you actually run into a situation where somebody's actually being like that, the word itself is going to lose its power and nobody's going to fucking care anymore?
No.
I do, because I think the word is honestly thrown around way too fucking freely and it's used for almost every damn situation. And just objecting certain values that usually tend to be pretty conservative will get you labeled, oh, you're a Marxist, you're a communist, oh, this guy's a commie. And it's
how about an example?
I actually agree with number 80 on this one.
Okay, you after him, but 80, how about an example?
Let's see. I would have to pull up something on Kevin Martin's page, but I mean, anything, dude. Like, I mean, if you really think about it, literally anything that I've talked to conservatives about, whether it's about police issues, whether it's about gun control, and me personally, I'm not about taking away guns. I might be even more about stricter, like, background checks, maybe like some mental evaluations, but we already talked about that. And something like that. But I mean, I'm not about like taking guns away completely or banning certain classes of weapons, because I feel like what's up?
I was thinking of Pepe. He called us Marxist all the time.
Oh, that dude he calls me a Marxist for fucking anything. Anything.
Well, if you're being trolled, then that doesn't count. So
no, I mean,
he was trolling. He legitimately
he got upset. He got upset because, hold on, I'm trying to remember. We were talking about immigration, right? Yeah. We were talking about immigration, and he was telling me all this bad shit that immigration does. Like, okay, so I link him an article. I actually linked him several articles, and he gets pissed off, and he's going back and forth with me in the private message, and I'm like, dude, like, look, at this point, the thing about data and the thing about research papers is that you're always going to find one on one side and one on the other side. That's the whole point of science. All science is falsifiable, so you're always going to find somebody on the other side of the spectrum. So why don't we just agree to disagree and just leave it at that? Nah, you're a fucking Marxist. You're a fucking nah, man. You're a Marxist. It's such a commie thing to do, and he gets upset. And I'm telling you, this isn't the first time I've encountered these things. It is usually on conservative pages like Tommy Lahren, Kevin Martin.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. We were on a chat a few weeks ago with Tom, correct?
Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, I got you. Okay.
So what led you to, I mean, you, after that, you used the label for him, and remember what you called him?
Yeah, no, I was actually asking you. Because I said he's a nationalist.
What leads you to believe that he might be a white nationalist?
Okay, no, because hold on. First of all, I asked you, what type of nationalist is he? Is he a patriot nationalist or is he a white nationalist?
Yeah, but what defines either of those?
Okay,
you can be both.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean you can, but at the same time, I guess a patriot. The
you
patriot,
mean a civic nationalist.
I guess. I mean, I don't know, like, because I know that the word patriot has been thrown around for a lot of these groups, and you're right, because there's a lot of patriot groups that have been labeled as white nationalists and it's funny because that one organization that you don't like actually labeled them that too. Some of these groups that, but the point is, okay, when I think of at first when I used to think of a nationalist, I used to think of somebody that was like a patriot who was like, oh, America first. So, build the wall. Whatever else I can think of off the top of my head that's very patriotic, but they weren't racist about it. They didn't have like different. They didn't think of a racial hierarchy like, okay, we're at the top, you're at the bottom, you guys are bottom feeders. But
okay, what led you to change your mind about that?
What change my mind about what?
About that being the definition of nationalism.
I mean, nationalism, I mean, that's the way that I understand it. Now, white nationalism is somebody that wants to create a country or a nation that is solely white, I guess, or where whites control the majority of the government or the resources. That's why I think of a white nationalist, because the end goal is to have the power.
Right. The word nationalist is contingent on the context, okay? If you go to Ireland, if you say the word nationalist, it means Catholic Ireland. It doesn't mean Protestant Ireland. It means an independent Catholic Ireland. If you're in the United States, it can mean any number of things. But nowadays, they're redefining nationalist as a whole, and I'm talking about the media and the alphabet soup organizations, the ADL, the SPLC, NAACP, GLAD. They define it all as basically they're trying to make it synonymous with white supremacy or white nationalism. So I think that in that respect, it's much more of an extreme issue than people calling other people Marxists. And in many cases, people are proud to be Marxists. There's a lot of proud Marxists working at universities. You can't be a proud nationalist at most universities nowadays. You probably wouldn't be able to survive and get tenure.
Well, yeah, because I think that a lot of people wouldn't understand. A lot of people wouldn't be like me and be like, okay, what context are you using it in? Are you mean like a nationalist, as in you're a prideful person in America, or a patriot, or you mean like a nationalist?
If you're somebody who believes in border control and deportation and the rule of the Constitution, there's many colleges that would not hire you to be a professor, especially in the humanities.
I mean, but you can't really question somebody about their ideology during a fucking job interview.
Of course you can, and you don't have to use the job interview. You can just research their work, and they have to present work. So you don't have to openly ask, well, who do you vote for? You can probably
That's true.
You can infer from their background. Alex, I don't know if you have any experience from Tennessee, but you know, there's stories of all sorts of people who can't find work in academia in certain fields, because especially I believe law is becoming pretty harsh because they happen to be, you know, strict constitutionalists or things like that. So it is an issue in that respect. So
I buy it. This has been it was a Marxist, like a Soviet plan to take over our education system.
Marxist.
Forever ago. Pepe actually wrote a very good article about this. You should read it sometime.
I'm not gonna read shit that guy has to offer until he can get his fucking emotions in check. Like literally, like I'm not gonna read anything from a fucking spoiled child who gets all overly emotional over a fucking debate. Like seriously, because then that means you're gonna write like that, and I don't want to read some bleeding heart article about how you think that fucking Hispanics are here to fucking overthrow the government or some shit. I ain't got time. I don't have time to read that.
This isn't about that. It's about how Marxists infiltrated our immigration or our education system.
Yeah, I know, but it's kind of well. I don't even want to talk about the guy because the guy's not here, and I don't feel like
as fuck here. Jeez,
you're in Ohio, dude. Like, isn't it cold over there?
I mean, it's finally thawing out. You know, there's still snow on the ground though.
It's freezing over here. It was in the 50s the last week.
What was today? Is like 80? I think 80 or 70 or something over here. I don't know.
So look, last week we had that whole thing where I basically showed you to be a complete asshat, with the what's her name, Asata Shakur.
But that wasn't the debate, though. That was the thing.
There is no debate. I mean, it's
that wasn't the debate. That wasn't what we were talking about.
What's the debate? She's an open Marxist.
Dude, the debate. Okay, look. Yes, me and you were talking about that, and I told you that I felt like when she was with the Panthers, she had more of a socialist ideology. And you were saying that what defines a socialist, and I said that a socialist was somebody that wants the power, like basically to decide all the government, to have all control over the people. And then I told you that a communist was more along the people had all the power.
So let's get this straight. Okay, so hold on. Let me map this out. Okay, Alex, you can observe and whoever is there. Let me set the stage and 80, you know, try to wait till the end. Okay, so we have Joanne Chesimard, later known as Asata Shakur. She goes to City College of New York, becomes radicalized, joins the Black Panther Party. This is during the Great Society, where President Johnson was basically implementing a lot of socialist policies, including HUD and Medicaid and other major projects that were, you know, they were the biggest socialistic policy since the New Deal. So she's a socialist. She joins the Black Panther Party to oppose police brutality, correct? However, the police are at the command of who? The state. So basically, at this point, she's calling for essentially a racial war in order to form a separate socialist paradise that is only for black people. So in a certain sense, she's a national socialist.
Okay.
Well, what does national socialism mean?
Wait, hold on. I'm looking for
something. Isn't that what the Nazis were?
Yeah. So So what form of socialism does it take? I was talking earlier, if any of you watched my chat with Arjun from India, you know, there was an Indian socialism called Nehrulian socialism, which was uniquely Indian. But, you know, people make the excuse that she was living in the time of, you know, there was great upheaval, there was the civil rights movement and everything, which, you know, it's fine. But, you know, if you want to make that argument, you have to look at the fact that she called a lot of the people who were main black civil rights people who advanced the cause of black Americans. She basically called them people who were puppets of the government. She committed several crimes. Okay, she was involved in the murder of a police officer, and she was convicted of that crime. And then she escaped from prison with the help of other Black Liberation Army members, and she fled to Cuba. Now she had the option of fleeing to a different socialist country. Sweden at the time was more socialist than it is today. She could have fled to Sweden. She could have fled to France. She could have fled to any number of countries. She fled to a country that was directly in conflict with the U.S. So I don't really see why I have to explain myself. I think you kind of have to explain your case.
Look, man. When we talk about, okay, do you know why? This is another thing I wanted to bring up too, because you were talking about her lawyer, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Do you know why the Black Liberation Army came to be?
Yeah, it was to overthrow the U.S. government.
But why? Like, how did this radical group come into fruition?
These groups were directly funded by Cuba. They were not organic, okay, because they were an offshoot from the Black Panther Party. And they were basically looking to create a Marxist revolution in America. It's beyond debate, because that's what they were saying in their rhetoric. They distributed Mao's red book, the little red book. I can show you a photo of it. And,
are you debating the Panthers right now?
Yeah.
He's trying to make some. I don't even know
No,
what you're
it's
trying
because
to argue.
it's because check this out, dude. You're trying to tell me that this group, the reason that this group came to be is because the government.
Can you still hear us? Did you lose connection?
Saw that, and what crawled out of the fire from that was a Black Liberation Army.
Wait, can you go back? We didn't hear you.
I said that basically she watched the government destroy the Panthers. The Panthers were destroyed. All right.
So she watched the government destroy a subversive group that was tied to communist infiltration. Okay, keep going.
Communist infiltration. What's the COINTELPRO? Who infiltrated the Panthers?
Yes, the FBI during the Cold War infiltrated groups in the United States that were linked to Soviet groups. I mean, what's not to understand?
Soviet group, dude. If you read the COINTELPRO, that shit doesn't really even mention communism. You know what it does mention? It mentions a Black Messiah. Do you know what they were referring to when they were talking about the Black Messiah?
Go ahead.
The Black Messiah, in reference to that, was basically a person of color who would be able to not only bring in Black people with their rhetoric, but also white people. They were afraid of that because they felt that if they were able to turn that tide, then they would lose control. And they would have
on the screen you have the quotations from Chairman Mao, which is what they would hand out. So I don't know about any Black Messiah.
Now, check this out. But hold on.
When you're handing out books from the Cultural Revolution in China, that means you probably have some ties with a communist subversive plan.
Now, didn't we talk about this last time about the growth of the Black Panther Party?
It doesn't matter. What do you have to reply to that?
But here, check.
What can refute that?
What do you mean it doesn't matter? Because at the end of the day, if you tell me that, okay, the Black Panther Party was handing out the red book, right? But that was only the Ohio chapter. You can't tell me that unless you can provide me with some sort of like, oh yeah, dude, the whole group had handed this out. Because me and you talked about this last time.
That's the most retarded idea of all time. I mean, why do you have to establish the guilt of
because it's okay, bro.
If I'm investigating the mafia and one mafia associate is dealing heroin, and I want to investigate the entire mafia, I don't have to establish that every single member of the mafia is dealing heroin.
Talked about this.
You put a mole in the mafia and then you convict the higher ups. That's what the COINTELPRO did. You can argue that there were violations of the Fourth Amendment and that they were doing things without warrants and things like that. But no, you're making it seem like the Black Panthers were basically like the apple dumpling gang, and they were just handing out candy and sugar cookies to everybody. But that's not, perfectly well. That's not what they were.
Check this out. What I'm trying to tell you is this: the Black Panther Party had different factions. They had different chapters in different states. Each chapter basically was organized differently depending on the leader. There was no central system like a mafia. The mafia had a code system that they had to go through, and then basically
the mafia was also decentralized. That's why there's 5 different families in New York City. It's actually very similar to the mafia.
I mean, but I'm talking about one family. I'm not talking about if we're talking about the fucking, I don't know, give me a mob family.
The Gambino crime family.
I was literally about to say that, but thank you. I was thinking that, but we're on the same page now. If we're talking about the Gambinos, we're talking about the Gambinos, right? It's not like we're talking about, I don't know, another one. When you're talking about the Panthers,
the Lucchese crime family. Yeah,
I'm not very.
Your notion is this, okay? And Alex, I don't know if you want to jump in on anything, but
I'm listening. I'll give my thoughts.
So your notion is that in order to pursue a group that could be supplying an enemy country such as the Soviet Union, with information about U.S. domestic security or whatever. So you have to establish that the entire group with all of its members and branches is engaging in that. It could be that, for example, there are many spy rings that run through one person. There are many spy rings that run through other people. That's not the way it gets established. Now, look, COINTELPRO, yes, they did abuse a number of people. There were a number of, I think, what would you call them? Illegal searches and seizures and illegal wiretaps and things like that. If you want to make that argument, then that's definitely a flaw in COINTELPRO. And obviously it's good that nowadays those files are exposed and we can prevent similar abuses nowadays of the judicial process and defendants' rights to a fair trial. But the Black Panther Party, maybe it was not as extreme as Assata Shakur's Black Liberation Army, but the fact is that she did participate in a string of armed robberies after she broke away from the Black Panther Party. And, those are crimes under federal law. She participated in an incident where they did, while fleeing as fugitives from the law, they did kill a police officer. And then she fled away from Cuba after being convicted. So, this whole notion that she's a glorious freedom fighter, good for you. That means nothing in the face of the law. In fact, it just strengthens my point that this was a Marxist revolutionary, and she still is engaged in it. She still lives in Cuba, and she's unrepentant for anything she did because she's an ideologue and she's completely committed to it. Now,
you want to know another thing I wanted to talk about too? You said you were talking about her.
With me or Alex?
You. You were talking about her lawyer, and you were saying how great of a fucking lawyer he was. Now, when we look at cases like, when you look at something like the Panther 21 or other things, or even Huey Newton being locked up in jail, right? How easy it was for them to find a conviction for him. Now, you're telling me that this woman who was convicted several times, according to your research, right? She was, not convicted, arrested, and stood trial several times, right? That they didn't find anything to lock her up. Now, this is just my belief. This is just my assumption, all right? Because this is just my assumption, but I believe that they let her go because they were trying to get her boyfriend, who was also a high-ranking member of the Black Liberation Army, and they were also trying to see if they can get Eldridge Cleaver, who was also the founding member of the Black Liberation Army. Because they felt like they could get him. I know he moved to he went to like Algeria or something, right?
Yeah, but I think Eldridge Cleaver later moved back to the U.S. So
yeah, I know, because I know he died out here. He died in like Pomona or some shit. But what I'm trying to say is that I think that they let her go those times to get their hands on Cleaver because they really wanted him, and they also wanted her boyfriend too because he was also like a high ticket person. But
that's not inconsistent with the facts.
But hold on, okay, I get it. Whatever, she has a great lawyer. But at the end of the day, like I just told you, when you look at cases like the Panther 21 and you look at everything else, if they wanted her fucking dead, she would be dead. Think of Fred Hampton.
Okay, so why didn't they kill her then?
Because they were using her as a fucking pawn. That's my belief. They were trying to use her as bait to get to somebody else. They wanted her boyfriend. Her boyfriend was a high-ranking member and who was thought to be the brains behind the operations. Or they wanted to see if they could nab Cleaver. But anyway, that's that's just speculation, though.
That's nice. That's a nice theory, and all of us have theories. But the fact of the matter
Who killed Fred Hampton then?
What do you mean? The police killed Fred Hampton, didn't they?
Exactly. If it was that, and they killed him easily. If they wanted her dead, she would be dead. And Fred Hampton didn't even fucking do anything. He was sleeping in his bed when they killed him.
No, but you're presupposing that you can prove any of this. First of all, second of all, if that was the case, why would they have dragged out the process in court? And when you hire or he's not hired, Bill Kunstler, who was and he has a hilarious name, Bill Kunstler, but he was this attorney who regularly screwed the FBI. He was a brilliant guy. He knew how to use technicalities in court and get all sorts of dangerous defendants, especially cop killers who are non-political, out of jail for or out of prison. And he was a committed ideologue. He also got Islamic terrorists out of prison. There was an assassin who murdered an extremist rabbi in 1988. I think it was 1990, who was later revealed to be an Al Qaeda operative. So he was seen to have murdered this guy, in plain sight, murdered him. Kunstler was able to get him acquitted. So the fact is that, yeah, she was convicted of that one crime, but a lot of the other crimes that she was more directly involved in, he got her out of. And that's why I always say, regardless of whether you stand on the side of the police or the defendant in a case, including all these cases of police shootings, the most important factor very often is whether you have a good defense attorney or not. If you don't, you're pretty much screwed.
So you want to segue to Sacramento then?
What do you guys want to talk about?
I thought we were going to segue to Sacramento.
I'm probably
so I was
going
gonna
to
talk to you about
head
it.
out soon, actually. I have a lot of accounting to do for tomorrow. So.
Well, then get your little talk to him about Sacramento. You wanted to do that.
Who, me?
Yeah, you said you wanted to discuss Sacramento, and I think that's what you were talking about, right?
I wanted to discuss gun control.
Oh,
I don't know enough about Sacramento to say anything. I was just mourning the loss because that was tragic.
Yeah, that's it's tragic, but it's not unexpected.
I mean, it was the dude's cell phone. That bothered me. I mean, this looks very bad. But, I mean, probably next broadcast.
Yeah, next broadcast, we don't even know. I mean, next week I might not even have any broadcast at all.
Just let's find out. Let's get some more facts first before we talk about.
Well, I mean, when you were expressing your reaction to that, you weren't saying let's wait for the facts to come out. You were arguing with, I believe, a relative who I would be interested in seeing, and saying that the police ought to not engage in incidents like this, and that
they shouldn't kill someone who pulls out a cell phone. Like, don't you have a due process rights and stuff?
Well, if you flee from the police, then you automatically are committing a crime. It's called evasion of
okay, fine.
Evading the police, evading law enforcement. So
fine,
that's actually that's what he did, and in the course of that, he retrieved his cell phone. And it seems to be that they shot him at that point.
Say you're evading law enforcement. You still have a Fourth Amendment. What amendment was it?
You have the Miranda rights.
Fifth Amendment right. Yeah, Fifth Amendment right to fair trial.
Yes, if the police can apprehend you. But if you're evading the police and they can't apprehend you,
they're not allowed to just shoot you.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If I'm driving on the highway and the police flash their lights and I continue to accelerate and run away, what are they supposed to do? Just say, oh, fuck it. I mean,
It depends. They will probably call for backup, but they're not going to pull up next to you and start shooting into your vehicle.
Well, but you're aware that there's tons of photos of or videos of chases where they run cars off of the highway and they come out with guns drawn. I mean, there's tons of videos of that.
But they don't pull the trigger.
If you were to come out without your hands up and take something out of your jacket, they probably would shoot you and turn you into Swiss cheese.
It was a cell phone. It was not a gun.
It was dark, and he was evading arrest.
Even if it's dark, I know what a gun looks like, and I don't even shoot that much.
Okay, can you see what I'm pulling out here? Like, can you see that?
What?
It's light right now. I'm taking something out of my jacket. Can you see this?
No.
Can you see that?
Angle
How about now?
The camera down.
Well, no, I mean this is real time. I'm taking something out of my jacket.
Okay.
Yeah, can you see that?
No.
No. So you don't know what view they had. They still haven't released all of the footage. The footage that appears to be released shows that the guy was evading arrest. There was somebody, I don't know, number 80, if you know more than me, but there was somebody who was climbing over fences and breaking windows in the neighborhood. So
okay, let me say that that's the case. If the dude is running away, that means he's not an immediate threat to the police. Because if he were running toward them, then he would be an actual threat.
You don't know that. What if he's fleeing into the bushes and then he fires at you from the bushes?
Then he would have had the opportunity when that cop was fucking in plain sight. When the cop, okay, when he ran in the backyard, the cop kneeled down in a position to shoot, and his partner came from behind him and grabbed him and pulled him back behind where there was cover, right? Like that's what I saw.
Are we talking about the same video?
Same video, the one that you posted with the aerial view of the helicopter, all that. The guy runs forward. He said, "Let me see your hands." And his officer grabs him, his partner grabs him and kind of pulls him back because he was out of the cover zone. So if I had a gun and my intent was to shoot an officer, I mean, I could have just turned around and shot his ass because he was right there in the open. Now, the second time, from what I've seen, the video, from what I looked at, because I watched it a couple of times, the officer kind of pops out from behind a wall and they're flashing a light real quick. And they said, "Let me see your hands." And then boom, he starts shooting. His partner pops out behind and starts unloading the clip as well. So within that framework, I get it. Like, the life is a split second, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's like you have the advantage because you have cover. That dude didn't. The only thing he had was a little.
Yeah, that's what happens when you decide to, as an untrained civilian, to take your chances against a trained police officer. So. The guy.
But did we even find out that the thing is, he didn't have a crowbar on him. Is this guy even the guy that they were even looking for? And if he wasn't, that's even worse. To be honest with you, you guys are making a lot of fuss over, either a person who was in his grandparents' backyard and was caught off guard, or a very unintelligent criminal. All right, let me ask you something. You're an intelligent dude. I give you a partner.
Me or Alex?
You're an intelligent dude,
Alex
right?
Is intelligent too, isn't he?
Nah, he's intelligent too, but the reason I'm talking to you, that's why. So you're a pretty intelligent dude. So if I give you a partner and I tell you, okay, do your best in the situation not to kill this dude, would you be able to successfully do that in the same situation?
That's not law enforcement.
Nah, bro. Look, at the end of the day, your job isn't to fucking kill first, ask questions later.
Yeah, it wasn't kill first, ask questions later. They did shout for him to. You characterize it as an execution. It sounds like a pretty bad execution, though. Because if it was an execution, they would have snuck up on him and shot him in the back of the head.
Exactly. When we talked about flanking, right? When one of the officers could have flanked him, he would have been right behind him.
You characterize it as an execution, though. Do you think that it's still consistent with an execution?
Look, man, the dude was unarmed.
It doesn't matter whether he's unarmed. You don't know if the suspect is unarmed. That's the dumbest. You know as well that people can have homemade weapons that don't necessarily make the definition of a firearm or anything like that. You'd have people armed with, for example, switchblades or something like that. You don't know if the suspect is unarmed or unarmed or not.
Okay.
You're talking to somebody. I used to search people day in, day out. So
exactly, you did military, right? Now I'll put you in a scenario then. If you had the cover of wall and the other person didn't have any cover behind them, who's fucked, you or them?
Yeah, we had trained automatic weapons on them.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm saying, like, if you were in a firefight and somebody is standing, let's say, like, you're in the middle, they're in the middle of a dirt road. They're standing in the middle of a fucking dirt road, right? And you have the cover of a wall. Who's fucked, you or them?
What's the point of that? You're trying.
Who's fucked? Who's fucked? Who's most likely going to die?
Of course, he's fucked. The idea is to have the advantage. The idea is to have the advantage. That's why
they have the advantage. They have full control of the situation, but chose to escalate it to the point of to killing somebody.
No, they didn't choose to escalate it because if he would have complied with the commands, if let's say if I'm not the police, let's say I'm armed and I'm a gang member and I hold a gun to you. What do you do then? Do you run away and take your cell phone out?
So do we even know that he had his? What if he was? Do we even know that he had his hands in the air with a cell phone? Is that out there?
Do you guys want to put
Those
the
are the
video up?
facts I was waiting for.
Like, do we know that he had his
Let's wait
hands
and
up?
talk about it next time. I don't know.
Yeah, Alex, if you need to go, you don't have to stay.
Yeah, I need to get some sleep. I'm very tired.
Okay, man.
You joined in late, man. You should have been on time.
I know, I was at church. I've been out all day. I had an
You
interview
said that.
tomorrow.
You
How many
called it.
churches do you go to, man? Are you like in Reverend Moon's church, and are you like working for Pope Francis and you know
I wish.
what's the other guy, Joel Osteen and
No, dude, Joel Osteen is a heretic. Don't
no,
get
but
me
how
wrong.
many churches?
Ooh,
Like seriously,
heretic.
Do what?
how many churches? There's a lot
I
of
don't
churches.
go. So I go to my church on Sunday morning, then I go to a college group Sunday night, and then I go to a college group Wednesday night.
So your whole Sunday is dedicated to church.
No, what I usually do is I wake up in the morning, I go to church, I go eat lunch, then I go to the gym and do homework, and then go to church again.
All right, I have the video, so if you guys want to observe.
I applied for there's one thing I applied for a thing today with InterVarsity. It's a predominantly African American campus ministry, and I applied for it. Wow, that's horrible. That's really sad.
Wait, rewind it back a little bit, because
I'm just not
that
watching.
aerial view.
Yeah, his arms weren't up. You can see that his arms weren't up. Here.
Wait, hold on. But
Where,
why did he
pause
fall
it
like
where you
that?
say that. Hold on.
But he fell with his arms like this. The fuck? So if he
No, it
didn't
looks
have
like it looks like his arms were up against his face.
Maybe he was getting.
his hands weren't up in the air like this, but they were up. Like they weren't anywhere near like. It didn't look like it was like a shooting position or anything. It looked like his hands were like semi up, maybe like to his face, like you said, like this, like. And then on top of that, weren't they flashing the lights at him?
Well, so yeah, you're saying maybe he was covering his eyes, so he wasn't. So this video
like
sucks
slowest,
balls. Fucking New York Times.
That is the slowest getaway run I've ever seen in my life. I'm sorry.
I don't think he was running from the police at that point. I think he was just crossing back into his yard or whatever. Now, so here's the video from officer view. 2 officers crouching around there, and he's advancing on them.
There's one hand that's. It didn't look like it came from his hip.
Hold on, let's rewind it one more time.
Like I don't know, I don't see it coming from his hip.
Was he coming out of the back door? What was going on?
He was coming.
No, he retreated to the deck, and then he was coming back their way with his, with his cell phone out. So when a police officer tells you to freeze and hold your hands up, you don't walk towards them without your hands up.
Because if you do, they'll kill you. You don't get the right to due process. That makes sense.
No, due process is irrelevant here because due process comes if you're apprehended. If the police can't apprehend you, then due process.
I think the cops should just shoot whoever they feel like might be a threat.
By the way, if you're a fugitive, let's say you didn't appear for a court summons, yeah, your due process rights have in many ways been surrendered. If you run away from a court summons, that's why
they're running away from a court summons.
Where to?
Go back and was the whole cell phone white? Or did it have a case?
I think it was light colored. Tell me when to stop.
Because they circle it. They circle the cell phone.
Pause when it gets to the phone.
So hold on.
Okay. That's even worse. Did it have a? It doesn't even look like it has a case on it.
That looks a lot like a gun. That looks horrible.
That doesn't even look like it has a case.
So if he has his cell phone out and it's up against his face, how can they see it? Because his hands were up against his face.
Okay, but I'm saying like
he was wearing a hoodie too.
Is that an all white cell phone? Because if it's an all white cell phone too,
no, it looks like the backing is white. Yeah,
the back of it
looks like a white iPhone. In all seriousness.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that there's no black back on it.
That's what it looks like.
You mean an Aryan white iPhone? Alex?
Yes.
Yeah.
White.
Or a Google Pixel. It's probably one of those two.
Okay, is that enough?
Yeah, I mean, but Yeah. I mean, I don't know, dude. Like, that's still looking bad.
Well, how is it looking bad? The guy didn't comply with
Dude,
the
okay,
or,
but if you
It
said he
doesn't
has
give
his
you the
hands
right
in
to
his
kill
face,
him.
if you said that he has his
okay,
hands in his face,
so if it doesn't give him the right to kill him, so what should they have done? Taken out their sticks and beaten the fuck out of him and put him in the wagon?
Taking out their tasers, taking out their gun and fired a warning shot in the air.
So okay, so a suspect is coming at you with an object that you maybe so they're flashing their light at him, and they
Call
might
for
be flashing it.
backup.
They might be
And
flashing it at the wrong part of his body, and he's taking something out and he's advancing on them. You guys
it's not really.
probably know that when a suspect advances on you as a police officer, you probably fire on him.
He was not really
did
advancing.
we not just watch a video like at the beginning of this year about that guy in Arizona that basically shows that under dire stress, people will not make common rational choices. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, the dude basically.
Yeah, that's police are meant to, and they're not meant to look for people who are making rational choices. They're looking
No,
for
but I'm
people
saying
who
no.
are committing crimes.
I said under duress, under
It doesn't
stress, under
matter. It
duress.
doesn't
Yes,
matter. How do you make a
does.
distinction? It doesn't. How do you make a distinction if I'm? How do you even know if this person's sober?
What
Okay.
I'm trying to say is this: is
If
that
you're pulling over somebody for a DUI arrest, are they making a rational decision?
I'll give you a hint. I'll give you an example using myself. The first time that I got pulled over by a police officer while walking away, I
For a
got yelled at.
DUI?
No. Because I was 16 or 17, and we just came out of the store, and they pulled us over because they said we were ditching school, but we were on vacation because we were off track because our school had tracks. So basically, this police officer pulls me over, and this is the first time I've ever gotten pulled over by an officer, stopped by an officer. And he's yelling these orders at me, dude, and I'm like fucking up everything. I'm like not getting anything right. And he gets mad to the point where he like kind of pushes me down on the curb and tells me like to sit with my legs crossed. So I guess if I'm gonna run, I have to uncross my legs to do it and then put my hands behind my back. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is under those situations, if you don't have that many run-ins with the law, you're gonna fuck up, dude, because you're nervous. You're like, oh shit, like, like, hey, like this could be like, like, I don't know, they might shoot me, they might do something crazy. I don't know, why are they stopping me? Like, you understand what I'm saying? When you're in a situation like that, you're probably going to jumble and fumble and fuck up. Like, and it might
You
even
mean
seem
like
like
if you were climbing over fences and running away from the police?
But you just said that it looked like he was climbing over the fence to go home, and he didn't even know he was being chased by the police.
So people climb over the fences because they just want to? And this was while there was
I
a
used to do
report.
that shit all the time, dude. When I used to go to my neighbor's house, instead of going all the way around, I used to hop the fence and go home.
So the best situation that I can think of to validate your point is if they've identified the wrong person who was breaking windows throughout the neighborhood. But if it was the same guy and he knew that the police were pursuing him, or he suspected that they were pursuing him, then really, you guys are full of shit. It's really, I have to laugh at both of you, and I'm sorry sometimes that I'm a complete asshole, but you guys have to pick what to be pissed off about. Look, I had a friend who was a constant risk taker. We knew each other before the military. Then we were in the military too. And one day I got a notification that he drowned and died under suspicious circumstances. So, of course, I was not happy that this friend of mine had died, but it made complete sense knowing the way, he was a hitchhiker. This guy, yes. Are you sad about it? Absolutely. Does it cause you to question reality? Well, not in that case. I don't know what you guys were so beat up about. And, look, Sacramento, I wouldn't expect something like this to happen. I get it that it's possible that they could have probably apprehended him in a different way. Like the taser idea that Alex had, it's a possibility. But you don't deal with possibilities when you suspect somebody might be armed and has been, committing crimes around the neighborhood.
With a crowbar.
Well, why would somebody break windows in houses? I mean, you could have somebody breaking in to rape people. You probably have sexual predators in your own neighborhood.
I mean, I think everybody has sexual predators in the neighborhood. Don't you? There's a list that pops up if you look it up online.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, what about the
list.
lady?
Okay, the lady. Do you want? I have that video. Do you want me to?
I couldn't find that.
I've
I think
linked
I'm
it to
gonna
you. What do
bounce
you
with
mean?
this one. Have a good night, Kel.
All right.
Are you going home? Okay.
Yeah.
See you, dude.
Hey, number 80. One quick question: is that website real though? All those stories?
World Star?
Yeah, man. That you never watch that? It's the best. People are beating the fuck out of each other.
That one you send me, the hip hop news or whatever.
World Star, man.
World
Everybody knows
Star.
about World Star.
I'm gonna start reading that. I like it. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, very Christian website. It's very
Yeah.
yeah.
Find you some nice.
Love your neighbor,
Find
then
you some
clock
nice-
him in the fucking back of the head.
Find you some nice twerking videos.
Smash him in the with a brick.
Okay,
I
They
can't.
have some good
let's get porn banned. I'm out.
Bye. Jeez, man.
He's gonna like those fight compilations.
Oh my God, World Star goes back a long time. You know the video that I clicked the link and it's no longer posted or something.
Oh really?
So, yeah, there's
I
something.
know there was one on World Star. Oh, that was the one you went to and it's not there?
Yeah.
They took it down?
This content is intended for an adult audience only. If you have reached the page in error or under the age of 18, please click the cancel link below.
I hit that OK button, man.
Okay, enter. Okay, I think I have it.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me pause it. You want me to play it? You ready?
Yeah. I mean, it's a long video.
All right, when do you want me to? Let's go to the middle, okay? So this is after the police officers have already shouted at her to come out of her car.
And I think she moved her car too, like she drove it forward.
Yeah,
like
she has no tires on her car, or the tires are flat.
She looks like she's on something though, as well too.
And then she was yelling at the police officers that she was having a cigarette, and then she would talk to them.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is. They could have shot her right here, by the way.
And then they pin her. Look, they pin her with two cruisers.
Yeah, so you know, let's wait till the video closes out, and then you can give your opinion.
Okay, this is when they pinned her.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the comments on World Star? It's very interesting.
Yeah, the comments are kind of a window in American society in some sense.
So random.
Okay, so she's set her car on fire and is probably choking on the fumes right now.
And then a guy right here, this officer right here, is saying that he thinks she's stabbing herself in the neck.
Uh-huh.
Because she has a knife. But at this point,
by the way, while we're watching the rest of it, Bandsaw was asking which cell phone is it more hazardous for a black person to run around with, an Android or an iOS? So
probably an Android.
Yeah.
You would think because the Android was white. I mean, the iPhone was white. You know, like
no, you can get an iPhone in black.
Yeah, I know, but most of them are white. Like well, I mean, you get them in any color, but
well, the case can come in any color.
Yeah, that's true. All right, here's the part where she's about to pop up. Once you see the dude with the shield, that means they're about to shoot her. I'm surprised they let her sit in there that long, like cooking like that.
Well, I think what they would have wanted was ideally to have the fire department be available. So they might have been also trying to buy time for the fire department to come.
Yeah, they're talking about moving their cars because they think that shit's about to blow.
Well, I mean, if depending on where the fire is, it
They
will
said it was
eventually
in the
blow up.
back.
Yeah, so there's concern that the gas tank could explode.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so you have a concern for the well-being of the other, you know, the people who might be passing by in oncoming traffic. So I don't know, maybe they did cordon off that section of highway.
Okay, here's a part because look, she pops out. See the fire. Boom.
Okay, so that was a video. We're not going to rewind it because it took too long. So, I mean, what's the issue here, in your opinion?
The issue here was if you watch the video, they clearly state that they're going to use the shield, and they clearly state that they're going to tase her. That was the game plan. The game plan was like, you got the shield ready? Yeah. It was like, as soon as she pops out, like, hit her with the taser. They had the game plan ready to go. So as soon as the door swings open, you see all the smoke, and she pops out, and they're like, drop the knife, and they just start shooting her. Now, well, she pops out and she starts coughing, and like obviously because of all the smoke, and then they shoot her. But it's like, to me, when you look at the situation, if this chick,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at something else. Don't think I'm laughing. So keep going.
I got you. You're probably reading the comments.
Oh no, I'm reading something else. Sorry.
Oh, you're reading the comments on WorldStar?
No, it's. I'll tell you at the end. Keep going.
So my problem was that this lady obviously showed signs of suicide, correct? Like, would you agree? So
something I don't know about suicide, but yeah.
I mean, if she sets the damn car with her on fire and she's driving a car with no fucking tires, like, I mean, I think it's safe to say that she's pretty like cuckoo, you know? And even her dialogue with the cops, like, it shows like she's out of it. So the thing that I'm tripping about, or the thing that bugs me the most, is the fact that if I was in that situation, I would assume that this lady's probably trying to kill herself. Because, I mean, come on, like, she's literally lit the fucking car on fire, and the dude was saying that she was stabbing herself in the neck with a knife. So in that case, I think that it's safe to say that this lady's probably trying to kill herself. So would it be right for us to be like, fuck it, we just gonna give her what she wants and kill her? Because isn't suicide by officer a thing?
Yes, and suicide by cop is also an instant acquittal for the cop.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is that with that knowledge and with knowledge of the situation, like, they literally, like, 20 minutes of this shit, and they had a game plan to tase her and everything. Why didn't they go with the taser game plan, especially seeing that a knife is a close range weapon and you have firearms which are long range weapons?
Well, according to the comments in the section of World Star Hip Hop, which we all know are very, very
credible,
authoritative, they believe, for example, Buckwheat comments. So, you know, our esteemed expert witness here, Buckwheat, says 6 white cops, 1 black crackhead with a knife. How do you think the story was going to end? And then Clam Newton Newton. These
fucking games are so clever, dude.
Yeah, I do like the comment section on yeah, World Star is good because I think they don't censor trolls as much. So
yeah, the best name I saw was Pill Cosby.
Oh man, how are you a cop but you scared of a crackhead chick with a knife? You should. So a lot of people do believe that she was high on crack. Now a taser, I think I don't think, you know, I think it's debatable whether a taser can work on a crackhead. I know that
it'll work on a crackhead. It'll work on a crackhead, but probably not a Shermhead.
Shermhead, what is that? PCP?
Yeah.
So look, I think that the Stephon Clark shooting was a little more of a borderline case than this. This guy kind of thinks like I'd probably would have shot her if it was me.
Because you're a dick. That's why you would be like, fuck it.
No, but no. Given all the effort they went to get her to come out without harming herself, I think it's entirely understandable that she got shot.
Why bring out the shield and the taser if you weren't going to use it? You should have just fucking, all right, whatever. She pops out in a threatening manner.
I think that they really were hoping to have EMS on hand in any case. And you know, she was behaving in a way. First of all, when she was trying to pull the car out into traffic. Now, I'm assuming maybe they cordoned off traffic on both sides, or at least on the lane that was affected. You know, maybe they would have mitigated that. But you know, this was somebody who, yes, the issue you're saying is that why should they not have used the taser and all of that, because that was a non-lethal use of force. But first of all, you can miss with a taser. And then you have somebody with a knife coming straight at you, and then you shoot her. So you know, who's to say that she wouldn't have been shot in any case? So yeah, maybe the guy with the taser was too slow on the trigger. Maybe you're right. Maybe they never intended to taser at all, and you know, there could be some disciplinary action for that too. But I mean, what would you say would be an appropriate you know, consequence of this?
That's a good question. I mean, because look, man, I feel like they tried, but at the end of the day, it just because I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I'm watching it as we speak, so I'm not even looking at the chat thing. She literally stumbles out of the car. Like she looks like she's on. Like when she gets out of the car, she looks like she's falling, like falling down. So at the same time, it's like, you know, like she's like stumbling out of the car. Like it's not like she ran out of the car and was like, oh, I'm going to run at these people. Like, it looks like she's getting ready to come out the car and fall on her face. So it's like, I don't know. Like, I guess, like, if it wasn't so, it seems so reactionary. Like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, defending your life is reactionary. But it just seems so, it just seemed too quick. Like, they kind of prejudged it already. Like, they already looked at it like, oh, like, we're gonna go through all these steps, but we're still gonna kill this lady. And I mean, at the end of the
because if that were true, there's a lot of easy ways. There's a lot of easy ways to kill somebody without that. And you know, maybe yeah, everything's on camera, so they couldn't have just walked up to I mean, first of all, when they went over to the car and she kept kneeling over and getting stuff out of her purse, they could have shot her then too. That would have been much easier, because that's her not complying with their commands and also possibly reaching for a weapon. So there's ways to get an excuse for shooting somebody as a police officer. So you know, is it a bad thing that she died? Yeah, but again, you know, these things are you know, when you're dealing with people who are making irrational decisions, their death is not irrational. And you know, it's a tragedy, but it's not as much of a tragedy as, you know, for example, a child getting I mean, Tamir Rice was a tragedy. I have a lot more I guess sympathy for that family than for this lady, because or I mean, Stephon Clark, also an adult, you know, possibly you know, committed a crime and fled from the police for it. So look, you know, should the police shoot people just because they're in the process of committing a crime? No, that's actually inconsistent with both police procedure and you know, the laws and Constitution of the United States of America. But you know, at a certain point, you have to release them from the liability when people, you know, they make it impossible to apprehend them. And you know, by then they by default give up on their right to due process. But the Stephon Clark case, you know, given more, you know, footage that could prove that they acted. First of all, they did shut off the audio, so yeah, there could be some penalties. It looks like they did have some aspects of what they did that could be construed as misconduct. But I mean, I sent you the information, and I kind of did a little touchdown dance over it. That they do that community policing bullshit too. You know, it's all. You know, the police can try. I don't trust the police personally, because I think everybody's an asshole like me. But you know, they can try to engage with the community and make the neighborhood safer. But there's going to be dumbasses everywhere. There's going to be people who know that or who believe that they can get away with crimes that, you know, maybe aren't as easy to go away with as they think. And you know, when people die in the course of committing a crime, or in the course of and whatever this woman was doing, which is she was passed out at the wheel of a car with the tires that were blown out in the middle of a highway. You know, it's a tragedy. It's not as much of a tragedy as somebody who, for example, suffers a stroke at a young age or something like that. And you know, to have marches for this type of thing, I think that's not really going to solve anything.
They're not going to march for her.
No, and I wouldn't look. I think that the best thing to prevent more things like this happening is for parents to take more responsibility over you know, both their own health and that of their kids, and you know, try to you know, steer them towards positive activities. That might sound a little hokey, but you know, I've had plenty of friends who are from like richer households whose kids became criminals too, and ended up dying or you know, getting into a life of crime. So you know, they can afford lawyers. These people can't. You know, it's really an issue of do you value your life enough to make sure that you don't slip up against a legal system that's not fair or just. It just simply exists with an imperfect society.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with the whole the idea that basically extracurricular activities can kind of deter these some of these behaviors. I mean, it works. Don't get me wrong, like, because it worked with me. My aunt used to provide us. My aunt used to take me to the museum. She used to take me and my sister to a lot of different places, and I feel like that kept us out of the streets. But again, like you stated earlier, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because like at one point in time, I was fucking up pretty badly, and it wasn't because, oh, she felt as a parent. It was because, you know, when you're around so much bad things, eventually, like, you know, you kind of fall into it a little bit. But it was up to me to pull out of it and be like, you know what, this isn't what I want to do. So I kind of got out of that.
Okay, so we have a couple fellas in the chat. J-Man Truth Seeker says Black Lives Matter is anti-black. If it was pro-black, they would support the cops and stop the killings in Chicago. What's your opinion on that?
That shit didn't even make any sense.
No, but he's saying
how
that.
Does it not make sense? Like, well, Black Lives Matter isn't pro-black. Look, I'm gonna criticize Black Lives Matter, and this is why I don't really rock with them. Mm-hmm. It's because they do a whole lot of marching and nothing comes from it. Like, I mean, if you're gonna march, you're gonna protest, that's cool and everything. What else you gonna do? You know, like, why don't you start up some fucking programs, or why don't you start some other things? Like, you know, like, why don't you be involved in different aspects of the community and not just be like, yo, we're going to just be on national TV and we're going to go on CNN and we're going to go on these other news channels and we're going to wolf at the camera and we're going to go on these streets and we're going to march and protest. But it's like, dude, okay, I get that. But at the same time, it's like, okay, there needs to be more. Like, are you going to just sit here and just talk, or are you going to do something about it? Like, that's the way I look at it. But I don't see the anti-black aspect of it.
Interesting. So do you have any like suggestions, for example, for things that they could do besides the marching and civil actions that they've been doing, like blocking highways?
I mean, I know that they get funding. I know that a lot of people donated to them, and through that donation, they should have started. I honestly think they should have started community organizations, or like some sort of, you know, like some sort of community center, anything, like literally anything that shows that you're actually dedicated to the idea that you want to do something for your community. Like me, like I work at a school within my community. It's literally the school that I attended when I was a kid. And I work with the parent center, and I work with troubled kids, and I work with kids with behavior issues. I'm in the community. You know, when I walk around my neighborhood, there's kids that know me. They know me by name. There's kids that are in high school now that know me, and I'm like, and I stop them and I talk to them and I see what's going on. I give them advice. That's me giving back to my community versus I'm just going to stand in the middle of the street with this sign and get on this bullhorn and block traffic, but then nothing's going to come from it. Like, you know, like there's talking and then there's action. I need you guys to act and stop talking sometimes.
Right. A couple comments. I'll get back to you, but a couple comments from Bandsaw. He says, if I'm a cop, Fuck the taser, I'm going for the gun. Shooting first, emptying the mag, then asking questions. He's from Australia, so he has to deal with those raccoons with knives or not raccoons,
Fucking
kangaroos.
kangaroos and shit, you know?
Armadillos. No, they don't have armadillos. What do they have down there? They have some sort of reptile. They have platypuses. He can't fuck around. He's got to go straight for, the equalizer. He says a knife can be thrown, so it's not just a close range weapon. That's actually pretty true. If
so
you don't follow,
the crackhead would have threw the knife. Oh yeah, but they have a shield. What the fuck? It doesn't even matter unless you have like accurate precision and you're gonna just like fucking curve the knife like Wanted and hit them in the fucking leg or something.
The shield thing does kind of build up your argument. So maybe you're not 100%. Maybe there is some like argument.
They had a shield. Like they literally had a shield. He even said, "Get the shield ready," and they're huddled behind the guy with the shield. What was the purpose of doing that?
Sometimes I think they could throw a net over some of these people. So, look, what you're saying with Black Lives Matter, I saw a video earlier with Killer Mike, who was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and he was talking about
Run the Jewels.
And I actually don't know anything about his music. I think he's after my time, but
he's actually been around for a while. But he's like a Southern artist, so a lot of the Southern artists, like, they were kind of like outshined by like Scarface and the Ghetto Boys.
So is he from like Atlanta or something?
Yeah, I think he is from Atlanta.
So he explains why he wouldn't let his kids walk out for gun control. He said, "I told my kids on the school walkout, I love you. If you walk out that school walkout." So I think he's an interesting personality. Doesn't really march to any. He marches to the beat of his own drummer. Maybe I'll take a look at some of his other statements. But I think I think that unfortunately, Black Lives Matter. I did produce that video. I don't know if you watched it about Farrakhan feminism. And I think Black Lives Matter has become one of those movements like Occupy Wall Street that became co-opted by the I'm not going to say Marxist left, but the retard left. The progressive left too. But there are progressive leftists who have an agenda that's coherent. People who support universal health care. So kind of the radical edge and the militant edge of the progressive left, and eventually they kind of petered out, and people started to ignore them, and then you started seeing more of Antifa being taking their place in terms of the violent demonstrations that were more violent than anything Black Lives Matter has done, except for those shootings that happened in Dallas and Baton Rouge, but
those weren't Black Lives Matter members though, right?
The guy in Baton Rouge, I believe, was affiliated with them at a certain point. So, Micah Johnson, I think, was affiliated with Black Lives Matter at a certain point. But in any case, there's also Black Lives Matter, like you said, they got a massive donation from the Ford Foundation. If you'll give me a second, I'll bring it up. So, I have it right here. So the Ford Foundation is a massive, and Snopes says it's false, but so Ford Foundation says why Black Lives Matter to philanthropy, and Fortune magazine says this. So the Ford Foundation, it doesn't get more establishment than that. So when they donate $100 million to your movement, like number 80 is saying, it can be expected that something would come of it. So that's the movement for the movement for Black Lives. Published a detailed and ambitious policy agenda with a long list of, quote, demands that are attempts to match systemic problems with transparent solutions. One subsection of the agenda, End the War on Black People, takes on the criminal justice system. Another, reparations, ask for specific remedies from corporate, government, and educational systems for harms related to slavery, and more recently, redlining and housing, educational policy, mass incarceration, and food insecurity. So, then they go, 1 second. Last week, the movement, I just went to the beginning. The document is strong, clear, detailed, and unflinching. I don't think it's very detailed. I remember reading that. And diverse. The movement is led largely by young Black women and men, queer people of color, and immigrants. The mix is reflected in the language and the issues. For some, the agenda may help dispel the myth that the movement itself is set on violence. For others, it will confirm their worst fears. But no matter where you stand on the issue, the very existence of this manifesto is a confirmation of the power of distributed leadership, amplified by new technology and organized around a clear cause. More than 50 organizations have already registered their support, but one in particular stands out. The Ford Foundation added their voice to the growing chorus of supporters in the strongest possible terms. That's why now is the time to stand by and amplify movements rooted in love, compassion, and dignity for all people. Now is the time to call for an end to state violence directed at communities of color. And now is the time to advocate for investment in public services, including but not limited to police reform, together with education, health, and employment in communities, and for people that have historically had less opportunity and access to all those things. But the foundation is also planning on studying and underwriting what it calls a new and dynamic form of social justice leadership and infrastructure by investing in the Black-led Movement Fund, a pooled donor fund designed to support the work of the Movement for Black Lives and led by Borealis Philanthropy. Here's some language that would make anyone sit up straighter if they read it in a pitch deck. The BLMF's strategy, I almost said MILF, strategy is supported by two other components. The first is the Black Print strategy, a collaborative process underway to identify movement needs and resource priorities to bring $100 million in new resources to the movement for Black lives. The movement strategy centers Blueprint Philanthropy's projects. So there's a lot of opaque language trying to obfuscate what they're trying to do, which is basically the Ford Foundation organized an effort to raise money for the national Black Lives Matter movement and channeled them into a tax-deductible charity. So the second component is the BLMF Organizational Development Initiative, supported by Benedict Consulting and focused on supporting the organizational capacity building needs of a rapidly growing movement. So my impression here is that the movement has become corporatized, and people don't really know what it's doing anymore.
Yeah, I can completely see that.
And
I mean, because like I said, they got like a lot of money and a lot of people donated into them, especially when they first started up. I know a lot of people gave them money. A lot of people, a lot of celebrities, a lot of people gave it to them. And it's just weird that you're not seeing I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't know any Black Lives Matters organization that popped up in communities to help do things. I know they say that, but I don't know if they're actually around,
Well, that's one of the reasons, I talk a lot about the ADL. I think the ADL is a fake movement that doesn't really represent, the priorities and needs of the Jewish community. I think they represent a lot of people who have political opinions in the Jewish community, but it's bullshit, and they don't actually help anybody. Now, with BLM, I would say that they're in some ways an even less sophisticated fraud. For one thing, I think that they're pulling the wool over the eyes of a lot of young people. A lot of them, and that was when BLM was really a big thing. Now you have this whole women's march, which is an even bigger, group of morons. and the goals are so vague that you don't know where it's leading. And by the way, the whole March for Our Lives was basically started on an organizational level by people like Linda Sarsour and the the Women's March and everything. And I've done a lot of work on exposing the fact that they're a movement of people who are completely full of shit. They are not actually for a more tolerant society, because many of them are associated with very intolerant people. And I think BLM, they've lost their thunder, and in a few years, I don't think that they're really going to be a coherent and they're not going to be an organization that has any grassroots support. They're basically going to be kind of a PO box for donations.
I could definitely see that. Because, like I said, I mean, they're already heading that route. I mean, you don't really hear about them no more. I mean, if anything, dude, Antifa kind of like took their thunder, I guess.
Well, Antifa is specifically geared towards anarchist action, so they're not in it to change anybody's lives. They're really trying to. They do believe in violent revolution, and they don't make any bones about it.
I was referring to the media, because like the media.
Oh
like,
yeah. You mean they stole their thunder? Yeah.
Yeah, from the media, because the media, like, when things happen, it was like, oh, it must be those Black Lives Matter thugs. But now it's now it's all about Antifa. So even if you pay attention into like the way that the internet is kind of like laid out, and you go to a page, whether you're trolling or not, or you're there just to like look at some information, even people are just like, okay, when every time a shooting happened, dude, when the Las Vegas shooting happened, what did they say? Oh, this dude was a fucking undercover Antifa agent or some bullshit like that. And it was just like, the fuck? Like when that shooting in Texas happened, oh, this dude was Antifa. Anything that happens with a shooter and the shooter's non-black, if the shooter's black, you're automatically Black Lives Matter. Like the dudes, like those random kids from Chicago that kidnapped the one disabled kid, or the kid that had like with special needs. And yeah, they were like, oh, Black Lives Matter is kidnapping. And they had nothing to do with the organization whatsoever. And then,
but that's the difference, that Black Lives Matter, when they find it convenient, they're an organization, and when something like that happens, they say, well, we're not responsible for anything our members do, or some of our supporters do.
But they weren't members or supporters. They were just some fucking dumbass kids in Chicago.
Well, I mean, we could look at, I mean, the kidnapped. What was it? Kidnapped man. Chicago Black Lives Matter. So let's see what there's Gizmodo.
It's because they were saying racial slurs or some shit like that.
Chicago attack condemned by Black Lives Matter campaigners. Okay. There's a lot of people who are denying that it had anything to do with Black Lives Matter, but if you look at the rhetoric that Black Lives Matter uses in many of its actual activities, when they went to that gay march in Toronto and they interrupted it and they said, "You're not going to march if you have cops in your march." That's why people resent it so much. There was a similar incident, I think, in that forced. That's the joke, that the gay people, they had to add the black and brown stripes to their stupid flag to talk, to make it look like it's actually diverse. I mean, that's why Black Lives Matter, I think, became a joke in my mind. That, and the fact that Sean King is associated with them. So,
I'll tell you, yeah, but that wouldn't even make sense. Well, you were saying that the rhetoric, right? And if that was the case, then the rhetoric wouldn't even fit the crime about the kidnapping, because the kidnappers were talking about him as a white man, and I don't think Black Lives Matter does. I don't really know about. Me personally, I haven't heard rhetoric where it was just like, "Oh, fuck the white man,"
Yeah, but you're not looking around the country. You don't see what they're doing all around. I mean,
no, I get that, but
the first guy I interviewed for this channel was a Black Lives Matter activist, but he was an older guy. He was probably in his 30s, and we've messaged back and forth here and there, but the majority of the Black Lives Matter activists are in their 20s and even younger, and they're much more radicalized, and they believe in this postmodern cultural, can I say Marxism, or am I going to get another strike from you and Carlos? They do believe, they believe in intersectional feminism, and they believe in all that stuff. So for many people, Black Lives Matter is already in the rearview mirror. They now see the Women's March, which is even dumber in many respects, because it has even less coherent goals than Black Lives Matter, and they've accomplished much less. And they're associated with people that are huge jokes. I mean, Linda Sarsour. I mean, let me show you.
The women's march was what, for pro-choice or what?
Nobody knows what the hell that crap was for. It was for, it's all about Donald Trump in the end.
Oh, okay.
So it says in a strong push for gun control, young black organizers joined March for Our Lives. And she says, we can't afford to lose another person to a bullet, a badge, or a dollar sign. So, my reaction to that, there's many, many, many people all across the country who they own illegal weapons and they live in urban communities, and you don't see these people marching over to their houses. And they, if they really wanted to change something, I mean, why wouldn't they try? March over to the house of one of these gangs like the Latin Kings and say, hey, I mean, we're marching for our lives. Why don't you give us your guns? I think that they get a pretty fast education on activism when they'd have to run for their lives. Basically, they wouldn't be marching anymore. Or any of these. If you really believe that March for Our Lives will end gun violence, I mean, remember that if we're living in a racially divided society, every single ethnic group has a criminal gang associated with it. Whether it's the Puerto Ricans, they have the Los Nietas, and of course there's the Black Guerrilla Family, which is a prison gang.
I was about to say it's a prison gang.
Yeah, but these people are not about creating a safer society. They've committed to the criminal lifestyle as a way of life. And I believe that this march is virtually meaningless. The Aryan Brotherhood. Do you think this is actually convincing any minds within the Aryan Brotherhood, which is also a prison gang? No, it's pretty much the people who I see a lot of people from Canada and New Jersey on my threads that support it, and they're clueless. Canada and New Jersey are not the places where hearts and minds have to be one in order to support gun control. So I think the Women's March it lacks a goal. Last year they tried to do the March for Science. Where did that go? Do you feel more scientific today, 80?
No.
So it's just it's kind of like what do you call it? Like every year there's the swimsuit calendar. So they have a swimsuit for March. March will do science. June will do March for I don't know, vaginal odors or something. It's something else every time. So I don't know. Go ahead.
I think the main thing is that I guess that these acts are like massacres, like because you were using the Latin King example. So I mean, honestly, it's weird because I hate to say it like this, but it's affecting the people that they don't expect to be victims of gun violence. So when you think of like, these low-income urban areas and things like that are filled with gangs, people are just like, well, you expect gun violence to happen there. But then once it creeps out and creeps into like Beverly Hills or fucking Santa Monica or something, they lose their minds because it's not affecting the people that are supposed to affect. It's affecting us now. Oh no,
Well, that's what Killer Mike was mentioning in his video. And he was citing actually Dana Lesh from the NRA. He was saying she's correct that yes, the media loves white mothers' tears because it's instant ratings, and if it is, and look, I know a lot of I live in an urban area. We have black people killed all the time by gun violence on the streets. It makes the news for 2 days. 2 days, maybe sometimes, and there's other people who die without guns. There were 2 killings that 2 years ago they really caught my eye because they were 2 unaccompanied women that were found in abandoned houses, and their killings were never solved. Natalie Perez and Jessica Coleman. I was this was before I was on YouTube. I was sharing it on Facebook and whatever. I was saying, maybe there could be another Anthony Sowell out there murdering women. So people don't care. It's really doesn't register anything on the. People here, they care about the Cavaliers and
if the Cleveland Browns will make it.
Yeah, if they'll be able to get their team bus gassed up or something. You know, the things like that. And that's kind of. But back to Killer Mike, he was saying that when this happens to people in inner city communities who are killed by gang members or killed, let's say, by the police, but you get the point. No, the media isn't necessarily interested, but especially not for gun violence between gun violence that is not police involved, that involves black people, and he's not a conservative. Killer Mike. He's
not.
So, it's I think people have to assess what they can do personally, and I'm not exactly Mr. Empathy and emotional support, but the best I can say is yeah, like you're saying, if people in their neighborhoods, on their block, people who already are friends with each other, to get together, form neighborhood watches and talk about safe activities for their kids. But if they're able to own a weapon and they're able to properly be compliant with the law, I don't see why the Second Amendment can't be useful for people living in the inner city. I think it could actually affect society for the better. But the weapon isn't going to affect society for the better. It's going to be the person who wields it. It's going to be the social fabric around that person and the weapon. So, I don't know if there's talk about that in Los Angeles.
There's an organization that's actually dedicated to that, and it's called Black Guns Matter. If you want to.
Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
That guy. It's funny because
they're kind of divided though.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really done too much research on it, but I just know that the main guy that made it, the only reason I even know about it is because Tommy Lahren invited that guy to her show when she was on The Blaze, and he was talking, and it was kind of funny because I can tell that he wanted the publicity for his organization and to get his message out there, which is nothing wrong with that. But it was at the cost of sort of coming off like you're pandering, because what she wanted, it was like a give situation. But what she really wanted him to do was to kind of to be that black man that condemned Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Like she kind of like used him. It was like a give. Like, okay, I'll give you this platform to give your message out there, and that's cool. And I'll share you on Twitter, and I'll plug your shit. But at the same time, when you come on my show, you just got to condemn this group. Okay, cool.
Well, that's how it works. And I think we're both clear about what we think of Tommy Lahren, and how I don't think she's very sophisticated, but that's the way it works with most of these shows. But like Black Guns Matter, fine. I mean, if you want a group like that, fine. I think a better idea would be to organize it more on a local level, and with people who are from different walks of life within the community. So kind of business owners or people who are involved in the trades, let's say some plumbers or things like that. People who are able to keep it from becoming simply a vigilante movement. So it's I mean, you have to remember that even if you own a gun, it doesn't mean that you can just shoot people, at a whim if they threaten you. You do have, and that's why there is concealed carry training and things like that. And obviously there's incidents where a legal gun owner commits a crime, perhaps due to misunderstanding a situation or overreacting. But in my opinion, if you form communities or that that do own weapons and do tell the people around them, look, we're here to, if you have incidents, let's say there's abuse in the home or something, if you observe something and we can help, please call us, and we'll communicate with the police. I don't think that it should be something where we create like a parallel society. That would actually be more in line with the community policing of the Black Panthers. But there were abuses with that too. You can't have people taking the law completely into their own hands and then ending up in prison because of that. So how about you give the last word? Anything else? What's boiling in California? We know that you have like a crazy thing with the immigration issue, and the government is suing California. What's going on? What are your thoughts?
I heard about that. I mean, because they're suing California over the whole the
Sanctuary state.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. At the end of the day, like, California's California. It hasn't fucking changed. It's not going to be. There has never been any influx of like the biggest argument that I always hear is that, okay, well, too much immigration is going to lead to like job loss. And I remember in the early 2000s, like, if anything, that was like when I felt like it was like one of the biggest waves of immigration to California. And I know after the housing crisis and that situation, a lot of immigrants left. Now they're starting to kind of come back, but at the end of the day, it's not impossible to find a job out here because they take a lot of jobs that people don't want. Like, a lot of people don't want entry-level cashier jobs at a fucking El Pollo Loco or a McDonald's or Little Caesars or something. A lot of people don't want that. A lot of people want better, you know? So a lot of people, they're fine with them taking those jobs. And also a lot of immigrants sell flowers and fruit, and they start their own little businesses and they open their own little stores. So it's not, honestly, it's never really been like a really big issue to the point where it's caused economic strain within the area.
I mean, you're not looking at the economic strain that they're talking about.
I'm talking about within the area. I know probably like statewide it might be something different.
Yeah, because LA is not, with all due respect, the financial engine for California. Silicon Valley is. And
the porn industry.
Yeah, I mean, but until Alex gets you know, so yeah, the Silicon Valley is undergoing like a lot of fluctuations right now. You know, there's the whole issue with Facebook and SpaceX and things like that. So and because of the tax structure of California, a lot of those jobs are leaving for Texas. And that's really, I mean, nobody cares if there's going to be people selling oranges by the highway. That's not what they're talking about. But because of the massive tax burden of living in California, there are a lot of corporations that are closing up shop and moving to states like Florida and Texas, where the business climate is better, and that's when you're going to have you know, a lot of the state services in your state, they're gonna go bankrupt. It's a matter of time, and for them not to go bankrupt, they are going to have to ask for a bailout from the federal government. And you know, who runs the federal government right now? It's Donald Trump and you know, those old assholes in Congress, Paul Ryan and all that. Anyway, so we've gone on a long time, and this is my second stream today. I want to go finish watching this stupid movie, Valerian. So thanks, 80, and thank you to Sun Fei-Yang earlier and Alexander Ioannidis, the incomparable Reverend of all churches and all faiths, for joining us tonight to discuss police violence and gun control.
With the Sunday sermon.
Yes, sir. So yeah, we'll talk later. Thanks again, 80. We'll probably be strolling during the week, so have a good Monday.
All right, I'm gonna send you something in the chat real quick.
Yeah, sure.
All right,
take it easy.